in business. I got to thinking after this walk about I do so much work with people on how to decide between competing priorities and how to choose what's most important, how to say no to things and how to this. And this entire week I have all this new energy because I'm coming at it in a completely different ways of looking at blending priorities, of really just sort of ignoring this whole idea of competing priorities and saying, how can I do two things at once? Because it's not just a two birds, one stone. I mean, obviously I got a meeting in, I got to visit with a friend. I got 11,000 steps. That's amazing. That's nice. Two birds or three birds with one stone. But it was a more effective conversation because we were moving, interestingly. Like my creativity buzzed in ways that it didn't before. Normally we would have had that meeting over breakfast at Towson Diner while I was, eating food, and we would have had the same conversation we've had 20 times about this topic, and it popped differently. So that's my fascination and at the moment. And now you can talk.
Well, so there are a couple things with that. One is, the low-hanging fruit is just that there is something to physical activity stimulating your brain. I know that I pace when I'm on the phone, and I'll be sitting there on the phone talking to somebody and literally sitting while talking to somebody until an issue comes up that really actually requires some strategy or engagement, and I'll get up and I'll start pacing around.
That's interesting.
I'll do that in client meetings where we're talking about certain things. I know you do, but I'll do that in client meetings, and I'll say, "Look, I'm just going to get up and pace now." And I have to say that because sometimes I just get up and they're like, "Oh, I guess the meeting's over. I was in the middle of a sentence, but I guess that would be enough." So I'll tell them, but I will get up and I'll start to pace sometimes, depending upon, of course, I have to know them well and all this,
Sure.
but it does make sense. And so walking meetings actually are tremendously effective. One of the things I like about this office space is there are some walking trails here. And so obviously in January, it's not great, but, I was doing walking meetings or talking to clients on the sale, and I just go outside and I do the walking trails.
Is there a mall nearby?
There is. Well,
I really did have trouble getting over the mall thing. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, the mall thing, you get the thing about the mall thing. This is my second, is that when you're walking on the trail, you're just walking, and most people, especially people with a greater level of coordination and gross motor skills than I have, don't have to really think about walking all that much. So they can just think about the topic. But I think that there's something to being in the mall because there's a lot of different distractions, a lot of things that occur to you. And if you're with a friend and you can mix some business, some catching up, some just fluff conversation with the business, I think that meetings can be maybe not as productive pound for pound, minute by minute, but they can be more insightful because a lot of things happen in the white space when you're taking a shower, when you're on the commute, when you're walking the dog.
Well, here's the thing here's what was interesting for me personally. And this, I don't know if this will translate to other people, but I have been really looking at places where, because I don't consider myself someone who holds back in conversations, who doesn't speak up for myself, doesn't ask for what I need. But I have discovered that there's a certain sort of category of things that I don't speak up for myself around. It's very specific, and I kind of didn't realize it till just recently. And one of those things came up in this conversation, and it was so interesting. It reminded me of something that someone told me about men, and they told about in teenage boys specifically, but they were saying that men often do things shoulder to shoulder. Like women will sit down and have lunch, they're looking eye to eye when they communicate. A lot of the things that men do when they connect and are shoulder to shoulder.
Much easier shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah. And so you can still have very intimate experiences, but they're shoulder to shoulder. You're not staring at each other. So whether you're it's why I think sometimes couples have really their most productive, most courageous conversations when they're driving in the car, because you're not staring at somebody. So there is something magic about that shoulder to shoulder thing that just gives you a little bit of space or detachment from the just raw eye to eye that makes it a little bit brave. It makes it a little bit easier to be brave about saying something that maybe you wouldn't have before.
Except in the men's room, then there are